Gary Rathbone, founder of Sports News Africa.
Gary, what is Sports News Africa?
Sports News Africa is a project that I've been working on for some time now to basically bring sports television, so sports stories and sports content to broadcasters across Africa. I feel there's been a real need for really good sports content. I think there's an audience for sports content that reflects what African audiences want and the kind of programming that kind of excites and engages with them. And I think that that's kind of what we're trying to do with Sports News Africa, is bring those stories around African sport and sport from around the world that's of relevance and of interest to audiences in Africa.
There's an awful lot of sports and sports news about. Why is Sports News Africa going to be different from all that kind of blizzard of information and games?
Well, I think the key difference for us is that, and where we are unique, is that Sports News Africa is about looking at the gaze of the African sports fan and looking at the way that they look at sports and reflecting that. So it's the way that the sports fan in Africa and the African sports fan sees the sporting world. Sports News Africa should reflect that. And
what does that mean in practical terms?
Well, it means basically looking at stories from that perspective. So, for example, there was a story recently of the triangular cricket series in Zimbabwe with Australia and South Africa and Zimbabwe, where the Australian team lost one of their games. And that's how the story went out internationally, was that Australia had lost to Zimbabwe. But for us, from a Sports News Africa perspective, the story is all about Zimbabwe's winning the game, not Australia losing. So it's a small thing, but it's a way of changing, a way of seeing things from the perspective of African sports fans in a way that's relevant and means something to them.
And is there African sport out there that is not yet covered that you will be able to provide stuff on?
Well, absolutely. I think as well, there's a lot of sport out there that African sports people actually participate in, that they're familiar with and things like that. There are stories out there, in the world of African sport that certainly the more traditional sports media outlets and sort of Western sports news programming from the UK or America don't really touch on. There's a huge opportunity for us to go and tell those stories, to get those stories out there and really help to try and raise the profile of sport in Africa.
So in programming terms, what's the length of the program and what's the frequency and so on and so forth?
What we're doing is we're creating it's a half-hour broadcast slot for the show. It's daily, Monday to Saturday, 6 days a week, and the idea is that it's in a news format. So it's in a studio, presented by presenters, and because the whole point about it is that what we're trying to do is really just get those stories across. It's reporting, getting the stories, informing people, and keeping the African sports fan informed and in touch with sports in Africa and around the world.
So where can I see the program?
At the moment, we're just about to go onto the Star Times network, which is in 14 countries across the continent. It's on Azam as well in Tanzania and Uganda, and we're in quite a few conversations right now. We've literally just come out of the blocks in the last month. We've finally got the show ready, and we're now having those conversations. And we're very encouraged with a lot of the conversations that we're having, and I think we're going to be in quite a few places very soon.
And you've talked about the program creating the conversation for the African sports fan.
I think absolutely. That to me is what it's about. I think the conversation is an important part of the sporting experience, the media experience as far as sport is concerned. And that's what we want to do, is we really want to create that space for that conversation to take place. Sports fans across Africa, like anywhere around the world, want to have that conversation. I think that this conversational space for sports is not very well served at a broader scale, and I think we can do that. And for many ways, I look at the show itself is that we want to create stories in there that we can ask ourselves, do these stories either continue a conversation that's existing at the moment among sports fans in Africa, or at least would start a conversation among sports fans? That's what Sports News Africa is about, getting that conversation started or engaging with that conversation in that show. And then from there is to take that create that space through the other programs that we're going to be creating. There's a show called The Conversation, and then in the online space, so that you have the story reported that refers to the conversation, that people then can have that conversation around the other programs, and then take it into the digital and online space where people themselves, the fans themselves, can engage with that conversation.
Africa loves sport, and Africa's sporting conversation starts right here with Sports News Africa. Hello and welcome to Sports News Africa. We bring you all the biggest stories.
$3 million to the Ghana football team.
Discuss the key talking points.
Luis Suarez is to be suspended.
And drive the conversation about sport in Africa and around the world.
The best teams are not aware of this.
So whether it's football, rugby, basketball, tennis,
I really like being here.
golf, cycling, motorsport, or whatever you're passionate about. Let's get the conversation started.
Everyone, come together, let's get this party started right.
I'm Angela Agor.
I'm Ehi Longi.
Now's the time, everyone, let's make the feeling last all night.
I'm Timothy Dibson.
Sports News Africa, the home of Africa's sporting conversation.